We took a 71-day grand cruise around South America on Silver Sea Silver Ray, and friends say, "Tell us about your cruise." And it's just too much to describe other than to say it was great. So I put together a presentation, 71 days in 78 minutes, which covers all the high points. So here we go. Okay, why this cruise? I was looking for a transatlantic cruise and stumbled upon this grand adventure, Fort Lauderdale to Fort Lauderdale. No flying. We could bring as much as we wanted, and we did. We had never been to most of these ports, and if you want to go to South America, it has to be during the Florida season. So here's our route through the Panama Canal, around South America, up and down the Amazon, back to Fort Lauderdale. What you're looking at is the back layer. There's another layer in front of this. Since we're not flying, we could bring as much as we wanted, but that doesn't mean we brought everything we needed or needed everything we brought. So we have a pretty big cabin, so we think everything will fit, and as a matter of fact, we actually had extra drawers. The cabin is pretty nice, but we can't stay in it for the entire voyage. That's the bad news. They created 10 custom lunch menus for us, and here are the dinner menus: vegan, gluten-free, seed oil-free. They have 10 different lunches and 10 different dinners, not your typical cruise cuisine. So for our first port, we approached Cozumel. The weather was really rough and windy, very windy, so we could not dock until late in the day. By the time we got docked and got into town, everything was closed. We finally found a grocery store which was open. "You know what, honey? I'm going to go to the store to pick up some eggs and a motorcycle. Do you need anything?" These buckets are not for sale. They have leaks in the roof, so the buckets are placed strategically all over the store, catching drips. So here we're getting back to the ship. It's not raining, but windy. The following morning, we're on our way to our tour of Chichen Itza. So look carefully here, and you'll see the Silver Ray in front of a giant NCL ship that just dwarfs us. We had to take a ferry to the mainland to get to Chichen Itza, and they don't like these things on the ferry. You can't bring a gun, can't bring pot, no knife, or a bomb with a lit fuse. You aren't supposed to light the fuse until you are on board. So here's where we're headed. We're in Isla Cozumel on the right, and we're going to Chichen Itza on the left. So we take a ferry across and then take a bus the rest of the way. So here we are at Chichen Itza, and they have a plaque, and what it means is you can't be shooting up the place in an armed conflict or you'll get in trouble. So there are all these carvings. This is a snake, and they pretend they know what they mean. So there's a game. They're telling us there's this game. You see that hoop up there with the red arrow? The trick is you're supposed to get a ball through that hoop, that's the game, without using your hands, by bouncing it off of your hip. Now, and they aren't sure if the winners or the losers get killed after the game. That seems like a pretty significant detail. And where are the stands? Nobody's watching this life and death game? And this is the ball. Look at the size of that ball they're supposed to get through that ring. I don't think a major league pitcher or even a quarterback using his hands could get that ball through that hoop. Show me someone who can do that today if they were doing this way back when. And the tourists just line up. "Oh yeah, that makes sense." So here we are in front of the Chichen Itza Pyramid. It's one of the 7 modern wonders of the world, and there is significance to everything, and most of that makes sense. They took us out to a very nice lunch, but we ate too long and had to hurry back to catch the ferry, but that's another whole story. Now here, this is important, the driver is using his cell phone to keep up on his text messages, because if the driver is behind on his text messages, he might get nervous and have an accident. So it's important that he stays on top of his text messages, and we are lucky to have such a conscientious driver. Now this is a brand new bus, but the driver's window doesn't open. So he sends the guide out to pay the toll, but the guide is a little too short. So he says, "Okay, this is how you do it. I'm a little taller. I can do this." And it's a good thing the driver could do it. Otherwise, they would have come back to the bus and got me to do it. And then who would take the pictures? So this time there's actually a human. So the driver got out and paid the toll himself, and he got to stretch his arms and legs at the same time. Now, these are monkey bridges, and they put up these bridges because evidently there's been a lot of monkey roadkill, and that's not a good thing. So they put these bridges up, but I don't think the monkeys get it, because how do they know? They can't read a sign because they can't read Spanish or English because they're monkeys. And they don't follow directions because they're monkeys. and I don't think you can train them. So the monkeys are supposed to cross the bridge. I think a better idea, maybe put up a watch out for monkeys sign or monkey crossing and see how the humans react. Because if you can't get humans to follow directions, forget about training monkeys because they're monkeys. I think it's well intentioned, but I have my doubts. I'd like to see how it works. Now here we are back at the ship, and Anna Maria went out in this nasty weather to get us avocado oil. The welcoming committee is out for us, which is very nice. Here's a dinner, which is very tasty, and a dessert that's even tastier. Now, Anna Maria is on the right. She's the head chef of Silversea, or a head chef, and she was on the first 10 days to train Michelle, who's posing with us, and who was our private sous chef. She did other things, but she prepared all our meals. Ricardo, with the desserts, is the pastry chef, who's doing a great job, as you see. So it's formal night, and if you're having trouble tying a bow tie, what do? You call the butler. But if a butler can't tie the tie either, he calls his associate, who can't tie it either. So luckily, I had a spare clip-on bow tie, which saved the day. Now we're at the Panama Canal, approaching the first locks on the Caribbean side, and you can see that the lock is full of water, so that has to drain out, and the gates will open up. We sail inside, they close the gates, let more water in, and up we go. Here's the Santa Maria, which was preceded by the Nina and the Pinta. Here the gates are closed, ready to fill up and take the next ship down. I have breakfast on the balcony every day, which is very nice. Here you can see the gates closing. We're about to enter Gatun Lake to cruise across to the Pacific side. And now you can see the boat going down. And they have these navigation markers all across the lake. There's a pilot on board every ship who knows the way, but they line up these markers, and that's how they keep going in the right direction. This is the Chagres River, which provides all the water and feeds the whole system. This is the Culebra Cut, which is the most difficult part of the project. We're approaching the Pacific locks, and that rowboat better get out of the way. Here are the viewing stands where they can watch us and we can watch them watching us, but it looks pretty hot down there. This is the dam which holds back all the water so the canal can operate. This is the other side of the dam, and you can see the difference in water level from the lake to the Pacific Ocean. And by the way, the tides on the Pacific side are very high, so it looks like this is probably high tide. The gates are opening, we're at sea level, and off we go. That was a great trip through the canal. That was the old canal. We have not been through the new canal. Here we can see Panama City, which is very modern. Our next stop is Manta, Ecuador, after 2 days at sea. They're building boats right to the side of the road, which I find very interesting. Note the bamboo scaffolding. We visit a coca plantation. These are coca pods. The coca beans are inside. You can see the difference between a genetically modified pod and a national or natural pod. The GM pods grow twice as fast and are twice as big. All the chocolate you eat, even organic, comes from GM pods. They keep one national plant on the plantation for pollination. The wood from this tree is like a sponge, so it's not good for lumber, but it provides nice shade. They lay the coca beans out to dry. Note the volleyball court in the back. This is the owner of the farm, and he gave us a pineapple to take back to the ship. They had to cut it in the kitchen because they don't trust guests with knives. Maybe they're afraid of a mutiny. I don't know. The next logical stop is the chocolate factory. There's a bigger factory in Hershey, Pennsylvania. This was a good stop. We made chocolate treats. They put me to work and paid me in chocolate. We had time to visit the mall, which is always interesting. I got a manicure and a pedicure for under $16, which is cheaper than on the ship, and she did a nice job. Now look who came in first in duplicate. That's Laurie and Steve. I don't have time to share every meal, but they're all delicious. We had to throttle back on the lunches to keep it to soup and salad because there's just too much food. The crew says, "Oh, you're on vacation." No, for 71 days, I better eat like I'm at home. These were our Australian friends. We met such interesting people from all over the world and could invite them to join us at our table for dinner. Some ordered our food, some did not, and they missed the boat. So now we're in Lima. Doctors are on strike and the police are prepared. The doctors might come after you with a scalpel or a reflex hammer. Better hope nobody gets hurt. Shoe shine stands like this are all over the city. There's no excuse for dirty shoes. I'm not exaggerating. Maybe a dentist is walking down the street and decides he needs a new chair. They like balconies. You can't tell from the pictures, but everything is really dirty. Maybe a shoe shine could start a window cleaning business. No competition. Tapara Limena women dressed like this with one peekaboo eye showing through for 300 years because they thought it gave them freedom and anonymity. Men didn't like it because they could be complimenting their wife or mother-in-law. This is Francisco Pizarro, the founder of Lima. And they're saying, Somos libres is we are free. I don't think so. I don't think this is a good name for a gym. That's in familiar restaurants. No toilet seats in South America, and don't flush the paper. That's what that can is for on the side, which, if you ask me, is pretty disgusting. This is the Parque de Amor, which is the Park of Love. Everybody's locked up their locks. Nice statue. Here's a Suite 15 in the Parque de Amor. And I don't know what is going on here. This is too weird. Another wonderful meal. We found a shopping center, which is like down a hill, but with a beautiful view. Another view of the shopping center. And this wall is in the lower part, and all the area where the road is landfill. So that whole area is built up, and the wall is the level, the natural level, but it's got cages over it so the rocks don't fall. Here's another wonderful meal. Now we're in Paracas. There's a desert on the ocean, which I find very weird because in Florida, it's very wet by the ocean. This is known as the Candelabra, and they don't know if it's 200 or 2,000 years old. We took a ride on a speedboat to come to this island to see the birds. And there are guaneros who come to the island to harvest guano, which is bird poop. And that's a whole industry, which I won't go into. Here's a booth, a little cart for the eggs of quail. On a sea day, Laurie took a cooking class. We had another formal night. You'll notice the same bow tie. We came to Chile. A sniffer dog welcomed us. We went to a museum with mummies. They said life expectancy is low due to domestic violence. I think that's pretty weird. You can see petroglyphs on the mountain in the background. They took us to a nursery, but you couldn't buy any plants because what are you going to do with them? Here we're at the top of a hill, and I asked Sergeant Ormazabal to pose with us. How about a picture with your whole squad? This is what we got. Maybe just a little bit closer this time. Then we went to the Comandante Don Juan San Martin Military Museum. We'll try this one with just us. That's the view from the top without the police. And this is the mountain on which we took the pictures. You can see the flag. And our bridge instructors walked up there. We took a bus. This church was designed by Gustav Eiffel. He heard that a previous church was wrecked in an earthquake. And I don't know if he donated, I don't know how it worked, but he built this church and it's all metal. And this is the interior. We found this missing toilet seat from Lima on the street. Who knows? Now this is really the toxic gym. There's a little crane collapsed on top of the gym. It's a tragedy. Tried to buy jeans, all too short. The little girl wants some cotton candy. May I please have some cotton candy? And she dropped her dinero. Looked out on the balcony. I saw a hammerhead shark swimming by. Now we're in Coquimbo and La Serena, Chile, February 7th. Here's a lighthouse. And these dogs are crazy. I've heard this going on from the top of the lighthouse, came down, doing it again. So this must be a common theme for these dogs. I saw this piano, went to grocery store, ketchup in little packets. I know that the kids have food like this, snacks. Now here, the desert residents, this is a desert on this side, they capture fog to water plants. Laurie saw this woman walking by with a shirt, asked her where she got it. Turns out she made them and gave them to all the guests. And we thought that was just amazing. She also had other gifts for the guests. Her husband is a dentist in Thailand, pardon me. And this is the shirt from the back. I think I'm wearing this shirt tonight. Next stop is Valparaiso and Viña del Mar. Everything's built on a hill. I don't know if they have building codes. This doesn't look too safe to me. It's a tsunami zone. I guess it's good to be on top of the hill when a tsunami comes. This is the Frank Easter Island Museum. Rapa Nui, also known as the navel of the world, and that's Easter Island. All the statues face toward the water. There's a flea market by the sea. I saw this sewing machine but can't take it to go. They have a flower clock, which has a Swiss movement. It's a very big deal. Valparaiso is a city of funiculars, and you can see a funicular in the art here. There's wall art everywhere. More wall art. And these corrugated metal walls, that's metal that was brought over on ships as ballast for weight. And they ended up using it to build buildings with. Here you can follow the ants to the candy store. This is Grandma. And Laurie bought a Grandma souvenir for her office, upper right. Now, I don't know what's going on here. I'm guessing it's a tarot card reading. We took a funicular, and the driver is very enthusiastic. He's watching football, which is always important. Here is the city of funiculars. Here we are going down. Nice views from the apartments. I don't know who would want to live there. And here, Justice is not blind. She is not wearing a blindfold, and she's holding the scales down. But even the dogs are cool. So that evening, I realized I left my hat on the bus, and you can see the hat is to the right, and the ship is to the left, and we're going to an event down at the bottom. So we're at a vineyard, and we took a picture with the captain. He's not wearing his uniform. He did not drive the bus, and the bus driver cannot drive the ship. But there's tasting wine right from the barrel. And this is the Kingston family. Jen in the middle has close ties to Princeton, New Jersey, which is near where our daughter lives. The next day, they returned my hat because we were 2 days in the same port. That was very lucky for me. And there's money in a pocket, and they told me the money was intact, which means they went through it. But I did have a Apple AirTag, as you can see, in the hat because I misplaced my hat. Now, this artist, Gonzalo Ilbaca, painted this car for Madonna because he didn't like seeing the artist get out of a black car. And he gave her an invitation. He would give her the car for free. He got no response. This is another, looks like Madonna-inspired piece of art. He had a great tour, and we saw this piece of art and bought it on the spot. And it's the Palace of the Winds in Jaipur, India, and we had just been there a few months before. Another artist studio tour. Laurie bought a piece of art. And there's the third artist, and this guy is a genius. I just can't even describe the art, the stuff he does, the machines he builds. It's just incredible stuff. And this is a previous artist studio tour in Philadelphia with my father and most of his progeny in 2019. They had a Super Bowl party for us. I guess it was February 9th. Plenty of food. Everybody was already stuffed, so I think most of the food went to waste or went to the crew. They played the show on a big screen, the game on a big screen, and it was weird because they could not play commercials. And if you tried to log in to see the show live from your home, it's blocked. You could see a recording, but you couldn't see the show live, so there were no commercials. And I was in the magician's show. He hired me to be a magician's prop, and he did some pretty good stuff. This is a Chilean Lake District tour. That water is very cold, and they have a little water park there. People are swimming in the water. The lake is very deep. This is one of 2,000 volcanoes in Chile, 89 of which are active. Active means it had to do something in the last 10,000 years. Another view of the Lake District. And this is the volcano erupting on our guide's, a picture on our guide's phone. Another grocery store visit. We love visiting grocery stores. This looks like a good snack, but we didn't get it. And most of the streets had these sidewalks for the blind, markers for the blind, so they could walk and I guess know where they're walking. So I thought that was really interesting. This is Puerto Varas. Pretty flowers all over the place. And here we had smooth sailing on the inside passage. Laurie's in her art class. And Chile is long and skinny. From top to bottom, it's farther than from New York to California. And now we're inside the Chilean fjords. Not the best weather. Here we're with our Swiss friends, and they're teaching us to play Phase 10. We also played Rummikub with them. They played with different rules. We played with their rules. We played with our rules. It was very interesting. And they were very nice. And they gave us a certificate that we learned how to play Phase 10, which is fun. There's the elusive blue sky. We had a chilly dinner in Chile in a semi-outdoor restaurant. They have heaters and blankets. Here we are in Punta Arenas, Chile. And they've got this tube on the pier for guests waiting to board ships. Went to a museum, and they had dioramas set up with indigenous people being civilized. You'll happen to note there's a nun and a priest in the room, and other religious icons in the picture. Despite the climate, these native people did not wear clothing. So you'll notice this strategic pose. They had whalebone chairs, among many other things. Then we went to a museum de Recrudo, which they have old-fashioned buildings. You can see how people lived in the olden days, and I am a sucker for this kind of stuff. It was really well done. Beautiful things, beautiful antiques. I just loved it. And here we can see that it's important as I use cash. What happened to the guy that sold for credit? What happened to the guy that sold for cash? You can see there's a big difference from their point of view. Now clothing is in style. And here the dentist is ready for you. Get some extra teeth. And that antique cars, farm implements, and way more, but I've got to keep moving. Ferdinand Magellan is very popular around here. Laurie found an art store and bought supplies. We saw some interesting trees on the walk back. They had railings on the sidewalk so pedestrians don't blow away. Now we are leaving Punta Arenas, and breakfast outside with modifications. Here's the Garibaldi Glacier and the Chilean fjords. How to record this is a glacial waterfall. And you can see the difference in the water from off the glacier to the water that's already in the fjord. Finally, some sunshine. Nice rainbow. Welcome to Ushuaia, the end of the earth. There's a very busy souvenir shop. Founded over 100 years ago. There's their passport. And Ushuaia was originally a prison. We took a penguin cruise, and we hired a photographer, so we got some nice pictures. Here they're installing a heated sidewalk in Ushuaia, which I guess in the winter is very handy. You don't have to shovel, there's no more ice. Here's the Ushuaia street, not much going on. I was there with Joel. I was trying to find a t-shirt. I could not find the t-shirt I was looking for. Here's Ushuaia from afar. And this is how we avoided the Drake Passage. You'll see that we're inside those islands giving us shelter. Another rainbow. This one's pretty sharp. There's dinner at Salt Kitchen, which is sea and land tastes. They try and give you food that's local. And we had one dinner there and they customized it for us. Here's just one of the dishes. And this is the chef and his assistant. They were very good. Everything we had was good. It was too much food. This is the Tigre River and it's brown with sediment. The Pink Palace is in the background. We're in Buenos Aires, Argentina. Here's a view from the 31st floor. They had a very small elevator. It took our group forever to get up there, only 3 or 4 people at a time. Now in the morning we had a shopping tour, but most stores were closed. Butcher shop was open. And I thought this was a strange sign. Carnata viva translates to live bait. I just don't understand, with the hook through the eyeball and through the finger. Yuck. Now this is centaur and a centaurette. Pay attention. It looks like they're making baby scents. That's something you don't see every day. We went into the art district. I posed with a bombero, who's a fireman, very formal. We went into a bookstore, which is a former theater. The whole place was beautiful. I wish I could show you more pictures. We went to a Le Pain Quotidien for gluten-free bread for Lori and no gluten-free bread. We were very disappointed. Here's artwork on the ceiling of a mall. Kind of racy artwork. It stimulates life or simulates life. They have a whole explanation. Here's Howard Johnson's No Orange Roof. I was very confused. Here's the Empress New Clothes Store. This looks like Mary C. I don't know if it really is, but it sure looks like her. And I got to pose with the late Pope. And they have stones outside the Pink Palace in memory of those who died from COVID. Well, people write their names or names of their loved ones on the stones. And this is Casa Rosita balcony from which Juan Perón spoke to 300,000 supporters who filled the square to demand his release from prison. He was a political prisoner. He got released. He married Evita the next day. Evita was an illegitimate child, which bothered her, but she was eventually buried in her father's tomb. Her body was shipped to Europe, was hidden, and she finally made it back to her home. Here's her plaque. And in the cemetery where they charge admission, tombs are in disrepair if family cannot pay for upkeep. Now, a family member can sell the plot, which is very expensive, but you better watch your back because your ancestors will be very angry with you if you sold the plot and ditched them somewhere else. This is the Evita Museum in a former mansion. In the museum, we're not allowed to take pictures of her dresses, but you can find this picture online, so I don't know what that's about. Here's Evita as a young woman, a young teen. Harrods banned shirt from the Eva Peron Foundation. The government of the self-proclaimed Liberating Army was ordered to remove all references to the foundation, leaving the hole that can be seen in this shirt. Evita fought for the women's right to vote and did vote once before her death. She died of ovarian cancer, very young. Here's the Church of the Day. This is the obelisk in Buenos Aires. We got to Montevideo, Uruguay, and I noticed all these ships, sunken ships, wondering what that's about. And it turns out there was a crane collapse and brought down all the ships, but according to the newspaper, that will be cleaned up by 2023. And this is the Teatro Solis, named after the first European to set foot in Uruguay. But according to our guide, Solis was killed by the natives, but he was liked by the natives, but the feeling was not mutual. According to legend, and confirmed by the internet, so it must be true, Solis and his exploratory party were eaten by the natives. The only disputed part is which tribe had him for dinner, because the Charu didn't practice cannibalism while the Guanare Indians did. Surviving crew members reported Diaz to Solis, and most of the other members had been killed, thus putting their expedition to an end. His brother-in-law took charge of the ships and returned to Spain. Good idea. He also told them that there was no gold or silver in Uruguay, and that kept the Spanish out for a while. This is Constitution Square. This is the Cathedral de Montevideo. It was Sunday, so the stores were closed, but the cathedral was open. They have a Walk of Fame. You can get an outdoor paid toilet if you have coins. Here's Romeo. If you look above Laurie's head, Romeo climbing up to see Juliet. This is Bruno Mauricio de Zabala, the founder of the city. Marijuana was legalized in Uruguay in 2013. And I don't know if you remember hearing about a plane crash. These people were stranded in the Andes for 72 days, and they had to resort to unpleasant things to survive. Here they are just about to get rescued. Now we're in Punta del Este, Uruguay, which is our halfway point, day 35. From this spot, no matter which way you look, you'll see water. I'm only going to show you one way, but trust me. Surprise, there was a church. And these fingers are a big deal. Looks like a hand come out of the sea, coming out of the sand. This is a very famous work of art. Saw a car covered in coins, bowling alley with King Kong, and we were on a biking tour. So we did a biking tour of Punta del Este, past the Beverly Tower, named after my mother and our granddaughter's middle name. And what's interesting, they don't use addresses. So they just have to tell you, well, it's between this street and that street or near the church or whatever, and there's surveillance cameras everywhere, and billionaires like it there because there's no crime, they feel safe. And when's the last time you saw one of these on the road? And we're looking at the front of the ship. The black ball means the anchor is down. Another yummy dessert. Now, a bridge, there's a famous bridge hand with James Bond in, I forget the name of the movie, where he bids 7 clubs, doubled, redoubled, and makes the contract. It's Moonraker. Moonraker is the movie. So you bridge fans, I'll be happy to share this bridge hand with you, and you'll figure out how he did it. Here we are having dinner on the balcony. Another remarkable dessert. Now we're approaching Balneário Camboriú, Brazil, which looks pretty nice. We got a nice cable car ride, but it was a disappointing tour. The only animals we saw were on signs. Nice vegetation. The only wildlife I saw was a spider, and I can't find her in the picture. And they call Balneário Camboriú the Dubai of South America. And who goes down steps must go up steps. We had 70 minutes to kill at a beach, so we ordered some French fries. We got seats. It had a nice view. The skinny building, nice private pool out in front. Back on board, local law enforcement who was having lunch. Spoke to them, and they work for immigration, and this was their first stop, our first stop in Brazil, so they were here from immigration. Ilha Bela, Brazil snorkel. And this is a snorkeling ship. Pretty water. Laura had planned to go to the beach, but we heard it was buggy. And I went in, there were fish all over the place. I encouraged her to come in. She did come in, she did snorkel, and she had a good time. This is an online cuttlefish. I did see one, but I did not have a camera. So Laurie participated. It's a drift snorkel. You put a noodle across your chest and you drift past the island. Back on land, this gentleman sold us some candy for gifts. He also spoke English. We had a wonderful snack, church of the day, and that Christ out front was an interesting piece of art the way it was made with nuts and bolts. It was hot for us, and we weren't wearing a fur coat. These are our friends Maxine and Glenn. Glenn is a rocket scientist. I think he's working on the dome to protect us with lasers. It's crazy stuff. This is Tom and Susan. They're sailors. They decided to take a trip, give everything up, and they sailed from California to Hawaii in the 70s before GPS. They had no refrigeration, and it's quite a fascinating story. And they also are bridge players. This is São Sebastião on the way to Rio. As we approach Rio, there's a party going on this pier. The house is the museum tomorrow. People want these speakers facing the other way. I don't know of anybody in Brazil who still can hear. Okay, moving along. It's hard to see in the picture, but follow the arrow. There's people climbing this rock wall. We're there to take the cable car to Sugarloaf Mountain, and they wanted to beat the fair, I guess. And I can't call them knuckleheads because I jumped off this bridge, but we don't have time to show the video. And there's about 60 people in each cable car. Beautiful views, spectacular views in every direction. There's Christ the Redeemer up on top of that mountain. Unfortunately, that's as close as we got. It's another long story. Another modern wonder of the world as well. Beautiful views. We're at Copacabana Beach. We were also in Ipanema, which the girl from Ipanema was there. They spray water on the sand so your feet don't get too hot. And I don't know what Rio is like when it's not Carnival, but this is the scene during Carnival. On day 2, we had a private tour, went to the beach for an acai bowl, and I see all these paragliders coming in for a landing right in front of us. It's a long story, but yes, I did sign up. They make you buy insurance, but I don't know exactly what I was insuring, probably the kite. The ride up the mountain was the scariest part. Then you have to schlep the equipment up these steps. I'm waiting in the staging area. There's 2 levels. Delta kites fly off the top. Here I'm getting ready to take off. That's my pilot behind me. He was in the Army. He's one of the oldest guys there. And if you're going to have a pilot, an old one is the one to have. I had a great 7-minute ride. I bought the video. Laurie had been very patient. Went to a mall, and these are the people walking around the mall. They had bras for sale, but Laurie declined. Here's another bra option. And there were plenty of festive costume choices. Here's a nice hat, which we did not buy. Here's a hat, which we did buy. And what a surprise, there's a Farm Rio store in Rio, one of Laurie's favorite brands. And we wanted to see how well we blend in with Carnival celebrants. And you can see, you could hardly even notice that we're any different. They were very nice to pose with us. So we had a forever dinner. Then we had to move to a smaller cabin. Then we had Christ the Redeemer the next day at 6:30 a.m. We just couldn't do it in Carnival the next day. So that was it. So here's the Sambadrome where the main Carnival parade takes place. The bright colors of the center are the actual parade. That star is where we are seated roughly. I don't even know what year this is, but that's roughly the spot. It's like a drag strip, and they make it down. The whole parade comes down there with people, with floats. It's really something to see. They serve French fries. That was great. And here's a parade. Here's a Okay, so we watched 2 80-minute presentations. We left at 1 a.m. after 2 schools, 80 minutes each. Each school has their own custom vacuums. And we should have ditched the tour the next day and stayed all night, but we didn't. And here's the tour the next day to Juga National Park. Should have skipped it, and that's it. So the next day, we're in Salvador de Bahia. It's March 6th, 2025. And that tall structure you see there is an elevator that takes you to the city that's above. And we found this peso store, which is like a dollar store. It was the highlight. It was just great. We got all kinds of stuff. And then there was, for the tour, there was a long bus ride that took us to the same spot we visited earlier. Here's the Church of the Day. And here they're dismantling a barricade they put up to protect this hotel during Carnival. And here we have festive shirts, but the tour was a dud. We just couldn't, we walked with these people, they're beating drums. It was just awful, and we left. So then we found the clothing store, and I thought these were interesting restroom doors. This is the view as we left that evening. It's the sunset. You look through the rainstorms in the distance, about to go down the elevators. Next day, we're in forgettable Fortaleza, Brazil, March 9th. Right behind us is a planetarium. Again, is another Sunday. Everything's closed. The street is not in the best shape of repair. Watch your step. Everything's closed on Sunday except for the church, but they were having services, so I didn't want to hang out there. That was nice. They had a street market and lots of unfinished buildings. But by the beach, they had nice condos. They took us to a pleasant hike through an ecological park. It was a little bit muddy there. Lori wisely chose to stay in the bus. We didn't realize how bad it would be, but she made a good choice. Another guest spotted this cougar, which looked like a termite nest, and they shared the picture with me. We took the ship's shuttle back to the mall after lunch. Lori found some good snacks. Another Farm Rio store. Here's a Sobremesas store that looks like a McDonald's, but I don't think is. We met these people at the Shabbat dinner. Soldier On, she wrote a book. She's an Israeli soldier. They sell fabrics to the army. Quite interesting story. He's a doctor. Told us about light in the morning. All interesting stuff. Next day is my birthday, March 10th. Lori gave me a very nice card with a personal message inside. She worked very hard to get this card done, and me am oblivious to all her actions. So, this day we were visited by butterflies and moths at sea. This one actually flew into the cabin and stayed there until escorted out. And we are in the middle of nowhere at sea. And for all these butterflies to be coming in, I just don't understand where they came from. No visitors before or after my birthday. Just on that day, all these butterflies and moths come. And they're hanging out here. They kept me company during breakfast. The cabin steward went nuts, I think a little overboard. They make a big deal over birthdays. And this is my meditation class at Mirasol, my 65th birthday, March 10th, 2020. Immediately before the 6-foot rule and social distancing was invented, the world changed forever the very next day. So this is the muddy Atlantic as we approach the Amazon River on March 11th. How many bridges cross the 4,000-mile Amazon River? How many countries does the Amazon River flow through? Can you name them? So here's where we are. If you look at that red dot, we're at Santorini, so we're pretty much going up the river there. And this was our first stop, and all these bugs are all over the window. I didn't want to open the door. I did not eat outside this day. But when we got off the boat, the bugs were not there, and it was raining as we took a little boat ride. This is the meeting of the waters where the Amazon, which is the brown, and the Rio Tapajos flow side by side, which is the darker color that's closer to us. There are different temperatures, they have different flow rates, and it takes them a while to mix, and meeting of the waters is a big deal. This is supposed to be the prettiest one. Many Brazilians travel the same boats by they travel inexpensively and sleep on hammocks. This is our guide. We passed home sites and farms. Buildings are elevated above the high water level. And this bug took a liking to me. He seemed friendly. He was curious about my North American hand. Other interesting buildings. Now, we were given pre-baited hooks to try to catch piranha. And I was not successful. I'm not the best fisherman. But somebody else did catch a piranha. And it's a pretty fish. They stuck it in a pot. We could have just cooked it, but we didn't. Instead, we released it. And this is Love Beach, right up the Tapajos River, but the piranha stay in the Amazon. So you're safe going to that beach, but you're going to be safe in the Amazon. But what you really have to watch out for are these Candiru toothpick fish. If you encounter one of them, you'll wish you met a piranha. The Candiru have the habit of swimming up into your urethra, and they follow the smell of pee. Once inside, they expand as they fill up with your blood, which may be uncomfortable, and they need to be surgically removed by amputation, which is also probably unpleasant and leaves you scarred both physically and mentally. If you have a problem with guests peeing in your pool, import a few Candiru and nobody will pee in your pool twice. And this is a fish scale, so you can imagine how big the fish is. And they use these scales as nail files. We did see some pink dolphin. This is kind of a show. They dangle some fish from a string to make the dolphin jump. And we went back to town after lunch, found a parrot payphone. When's the last time you saw a parrot payphone? When's the last time you saw a payphone? And did you know that L'Oreal makes Pepto-Bismol? And we thought this was the great name for a fun store. And now we're in Boca del Valeria, Brazil, March 14th. Only 18 days to go. It's a small town with only 75 residents. But they're hawking boat rides with these posters in English. Nobody speaks English. It's like they're being invaded by beings from another planet. And I guess they think we're beings from another planet. And it was just really weird. The kids hold your hand. It's really weird. Children show off their pets, hoping for a gratuity. They show off unusual pets. Not many cats and dogs. This, I think, is a armadillo. Residents came from all around to meet us. And they got dressed up in costumes. This is, I think, a pirarucu, and these fish can grow to be 400 pounds. Another unusual pet. Nice costume. This girl has a pet turtle. Here's a locust on a leash. They do win the prize for the most unusual pets, I will say that. And here you have alligator on a leash. We had an alligator in college that was very interesting. I don't think they make good pets. They do have a very nice new school, and I think it looks a little too new, like unused kind of new. Students learn their ABCs, and looks like they learned how to write in script. Of course, there's a church, but the church has a problem. Looks like they had a landslide. They must have had a big storm, and they were taking donations. I was happy to make a donation to help prepare the church. I think they're lucky the church is still there at all. And we did take a boat ride, not with this gentleman, maybe with his father. Off we go on our river cruise. But we promptly ran out of gas. So we stopped at a friend's house. And this Coke is the real energy drink that's filled with gas. Back on the river, off we go. He wanted to show us some lily pads. And here they are. They're very beautiful lily pads. But some grass got tangled around the propeller. So a man on another boat bit off a piece of string from his canopy for us. There he goes. At this point, I just want to get back to town, get back on our ship, because I didn't see a hotel in town, nor an airport. So if we get stranded and miss the Silver Ray, we are in big trouble. But we did make it back to town in time. The stores were still open for us. Everybody else is back on the ship. I didn't see a store for the locals. This is a shopping area for tourists. I bought a souvenir for my office. I like to buy something from a vendor with a $sign on her hat. This souvenir actually made it home intact, probably made in China. I learned later there was a person there who exchanged the American dollars we spent for Brazilian real, and I'm sure it was a favorable exchange rate. So we caught the last tender, and that was enough adventure for one day. There's a Shabbat gathering in the library. I'm still wearing my mask from Carnival. And we're in now Manaus, has a population of 2.4 million people. It's a large industrial center with over 600 major companies. including electronics companies, iPhone manufacturing, and that's all thanks to being a free trade zone. However, despite that status, there are still many abandoned high-rise buildings, at least around the port area. There are no roads to get here. Transportation is by river or air. So this opera house was built during the Golden Age, which would more accurately be called the Rubber Age. This is Noble Hall. They had events in here. This is the ceiling in the Noble Hall. They have got crystal mirrors on opposite walls to give the infinity effect. Noble Hall, beautiful floor. There's a Lego model of Teatro Amazonas, which is the building we're in. Lego used to have a factory here. This model was discovered in the factory after Lego moved out, and it was donated to the museum. The model is estimated to contain 30,000 pieces. I don't think this kit is available in the United States. It's pretty ornate, and no, that's not me sitting down there because I'm taking pictures from up here. The theater was originally built with 701 seats. Nobody knows why one extra seat. The presidential box was up front for visibility of the president, but was actually the worst seat in the house. So the presidential box was relocated to the center rear of the theater. The theater was restored in 1990, which is why it looks so good. And they've got these badges on the tops of columns to honor composers and stars. This is the view looking up. Again, a beautiful ceiling. Looks like there's a lot of wealth here. But unfortunately, there's a dark side to that story. The workers harvesting rubber were abused. The workday started at 4 a.m. while it was still dark, so they had to wear these uncomfortable headlamps. They had to buy the lamps, the headlamps, and the kerosene fuel from the company. There were promised jobs they could learn where they were promised jobs where they could earn good money and send money home. That was a lie. Workers had to buy their own boots, supplies, and even food from the company. The system was designed so the workers could never get out of debt, no matter how hard they worked. To keep control over the workers, the rubber barons had fake priests. Workers would confess to the priest that they were going to escape or revolt, and the priest would rat them out. The only way to escape was downriver, and workers were shot as examples to discourage escape. Men essentially walked into slavery. Now, the rubber was heated and vulcanized and shipped in these giant balls, and they had to weigh a certain amount. They could weigh more, but they could not weigh less. Meanwhile, the rubber barons lived an extravagant lifestyle. This person only lived in this house for 5 years. You can pocket more money if you don't pay the help. So you can see slashes in this tree where it was tapped. Rubber trees can be tapped every 2 to 3 days. Now we're in Manaus, Brazil, day 2, local markets on foot. We toured the wholesale food market. Nice display of pineapples. Watermelons, I thought they would have been cheaper. They're $7 each. If you ask me, these bananas look pretty nasty. I think it's $5.30 for a full bunch of nasty ones, $7 for the green ones. So if these are our familiar bananas, they must be making a lot of banana bread. Our guide explained many of the unusual fruits available. Quail eggs must be a thing here. They've got more familiar chicken eggs, not refrigerated. It's about $4.42 for 30 eggs. The chicken eggs do not need to be refrigerated because they are not washed. There's no egg shortage here because they're not obsessed with bird flu and killing all the chickens. I know innards are good for you, but they look gross. And I don't know why they cut the fish open like this. The fish look better on a plate. This is a better display. It's a very busy market. This cat knows where to hang out. I'll bet he gets plenty of scraps. Everybody's in business. This guy's got lamps for sale on his car. Next stop is the public market for souvenirs. Wouldn't you like this on your desk? I don't think I'd like it on my desk. But I could use a new hat, but I would need more gray. More stuff we don't need at the street market. The Shop Dope is a shoe store. Not sure about that's a good name either. This Guarana has twice the caffeine of coffee beans, so this will give you a kick. One Brazilian real is about 18 cents. Another beautiful sunset. We're supposed to take a rainforest hike the next day to meet a tribe, but due to a weather misunderstanding, we missed it. Same sunset. Not our first mistake for this trip, nor our last. Another reason to return. So now we're back at the mall. You can get a laser peel. You can get rid of your wrinkles in a Botox clinic. And since you're feeling so good about yourself, you get the supplements straight from the rainforest. You can celebrate with a sextuple cheeseburger. Yum. I don't think they listed the calorie count. We're ferried ashore by local boats. So the next stop is Parintins, Brazil. We're ferried ashore by local boats. And note the hooks. These are local boats. And here's an internet photo of how these boats transport locals. This is the first class private cabin. Very nice. Shared restroom. Bring your own toilet paper, but don't flush it. But there is an actual toilet seat. Here's the local ferry. And we lucked out and got the only air-conditioned bus. We posed for performers before the show. Now this is the Boy Bimba show, and they had a special presentation put on the whole show just for our ship. I don't know what it cost, but it must cost a lot. The performance was just for our ship. These are the performers. It's quite a spectacle. Elaborate costumes and props. It's great for the locals who can't get to Rio for Carnival, which is probably everybody. Normally performed in the 40,000-seat Bumbadrome. More elaborate costumes. And the music was at a comfortable volume because we brought earplugs. And it was a live performance by band and singers. So we took a tuk-tuk back to the ship because we couldn't get on a bus, and it turns out the tuk-tuk was much better than the bus. We stopped at a grocery store. I saw a Bug very much like my first car. Passed a warehouse graveyard for old props. Maybe they're saving them for parts. How sad, discarded on the side of the road. It looks like this hand's trying to click a mouse for rescue. And of course, he took us to the church. So we asked the driver, is there a Jewish church? He said there was, but it was too far away. But right behind this church was the Jewish cemetery, quote, where they rested. The driver told us through Google Translate we have a deep affection for Jews and respect we love. The weather started looking gloomy, so we asked to return to the port. This is the real Bumbadrome, where the Boy Bumba Festival takes place when a cruise ship is not in town. And there are lots of murals outside the Bumbadrome. These women are riding bareback. We passed seafood vendors. This is right by the port, so it must be fresh fish. But the weather is coming in. We missed the first ferry, which left in a hurry, and the second ferry was not in a hurry. It's time to board, and we were prepared. The ship has ponchos available. And they stopped the boarding process. We were very lucky to get on board. I don't know why they stopped boarding. Eventually, they let the passengers board, but the crew had to pack it up. Next stop is Salvation Islands, French Guiana, March 21st. Salvation Islands are a group of 3 islands which served as a French penal colony for 100 years. We only visited Isle Royale, which is the reception center, which sounds inviting. This is Devil's Island. The islands were depicted in the movie Papillon with Steve McQueen and Dustin Hoffman. If you want the details, watch the movie or check Wikipedia. It's now a hotel resort, although I wouldn't want to spend a lot of time here. It's very quiet. It's pretty as a peacock, but this peacock was not in the most photogenic setting. He was trying to impress the ladies, not us. I feel trapped. The guide said most prisoners roamed free because escape was so hard, and most were political prisoners there for slave labor. No privacy, no toilet seat or toilet paper, so no need for a trash can. 75% of the prisoners sent to the islands died here. Not a very good hospital. There's no cemetery. They fed the bodies to the sharks to discourage escape. So who was praying at this church? Was it the guards, prisoners, or both together? I would be praying for freedom. So were the peacocks there when it was a prison? So we met our stretch instructor, Alina. Alina was from Scandinavia and had never been to Isle Royale. There were lots of fun steps. We did not fall. Agouti rodents are harmless and avoided us. That's an agouti in the upper left. And would you let your child chase a monkey? I would say the monkey is smarter than the parents. Another Shabbat gathering on a formal night. That's Laurie standing in the shadow holding the challah.
I feel charming, so charming. It's so alarming how charming I feel, and so pretty that I hardly believe I'm real.
We had a very good singer. Okay, now we're in Barbados, only 9 days to go. Barbados is the first port of our last leg, so the ship is being provisioned. A friend from our Shabbat group arranged a private synagogue tour. It was a 25-minute walk to the synagogue, but most everything was closed because it is Sunday. There are 3 separate grave sites on the property. The synagogue is the pink building in the back. Now there's a marble threshold. As asphalt was removed from a parking lot, this marble threshold indicated there must be something more, which was the mikveh. The top portion of the mikveh was rebuilt. And this is inside the mikveh, the ritual bath. There's a wonderful museum for us. They opened up the museum. And we watched an informative video detailing migration of the Jews expelled from Europe. Synagogues, which claim to be the oldest, all came to being around the same time for the same reason. Inside the synagogue, this is an operating synagogue, and although they do not have a dedicated rabbi, a rabbi is available in the winter months. Congregants conduct Friday night services on their own. There was seating upstairs when it was an Orthodox synagogue. Now it's conservative, and everyone sits together downstairs. If you're ever in Barbados, the synagogue is a worthwhile visit. We had a beautiful day, and walking back to the ship, we found an open store and bought Laurie a new hat. That evening, the 71-day cruisers were invited to a special dinner, a Bahan affair, at St. Nicholas Abbey. It was a beautiful setting, and the weather was perfect. Dinner was served under a large tent with comfortable breezes. Unfortunately, our chef was not invited. This is a living room we could not use. You can look but don't touch. Enjoy your appetizers elsewhere. Here's the hat rack we could not use. It was evening, so we did not bring our hats. This is the bathroom we could not use. Now that we're in the Caribbean, toilet seats are in fashion, although no toilet paper here. Appetizers we could not eat. There was a very limited supply of appetizers for us. Here's a horse we could not ride. We did have a nice evening in spite of imperfections. Next stop is Bequa. I had 2 tours scheduled to Bequa today. The snorkel tour would not have been fun for Laurie. Small boat, raining, splashing, not her thing. The mysterious woman under the umbrella was to be my snorkel buddy. Mother Nature decided to foreclose on this development. The first house built was also the first house abandoned. You can notice the little rock slide. The story is that a couple woke up in the morning, went to the bathroom, heard a bang, and went out to find a rock sitting on the bed, and that was their last night. So getting my snorkel to fit was a challenge. My snorkel buddy happened to have an underwater camera. She did find some interesting fish. We were told how to find octopus, but they were better at hiding than I was at seeking. She shared her photos and movies with me. It was a worthwhile snorkeling experience, although I was skeptical at first. Turtles are so graceful underwater. I've only seen them lumbering along on land. I walked back to town rather than wait until after lunch for the boat. The walk back to town was pleasant, and I arrived at the dock early enough to enjoy a French fry feast with time to spare before I met Laurie. I passed this modest Anglican church established 1829. So for our afternoon tour, we traveled in these semi-comfortable trucks. They had more trucks than needed, so we could spread out 4 people to a truck instead of 10, but we shared the guides. These guys will make a custom model of your yacht from a picture. Or you could buy a stock model. We stopped at a scenic lookout. The guides switched trucks, and we didn't miss a thing. Here's a boatyard making full-size boats. Here's some damage from a previous storm. And we could tour the airport because no flights were scheduled. This is one of the highlights of Bequa. You'll see that modern security setup. The airport was closed, but the bar was still open. We do have priorities. Another grocery store visit. Grocery stores are always fun. Knock off Frosted Flakes with a common theme. A double rainbow viewed from the ship. The pot of gold did not land in Bequa. So we were supposed to visit St. Lucia, but they turned us away because the passengers were not vaccinated against yellow fever. So we took our 650 passengers elsewhere and went to Fort de France, Martinique. Our tour is the best of St. Pierre, which includes the ruins of a theater. St. Pierre was devastated by a volcano in 1902. These are the steps to the former theater. St. Pierre was the Paris of the Caribbean. So here's the story. When the volcano erupted in 1902, it sent out a cloud of 1,000 degrees centigrade steam, which killed everyone except for Louis Auguste Sipari, who was in this dungeon and badly burned. 4 days later, rescuers heard his cries and rescued him. He was pardoned of all crimes, murder, maybe because the person he murdered would have been killed anyway. So why the prison was right next door to the theater is a mystery to me, although they do have an explanation. They shared a wall. Still sounds weird. So he's referred to as the man who lived through Doomsday and ended up joining Barnum and Bailey's circus, becoming the first black man ever to star in the segregated show. And it's on the internet, so it must be true, but the only picture they have of him caught him peeing on a bush. So the miraculous story of survival was presented by the same people who gave you the 161-year-old nurse to General George Washington. Moving on. We visited a distillery in a very scenic setting, unless you turn the other way. Sugar cane is getting ready to turn into rum. This process is powered by a steam engine. There's also a water wheel, but I'm not sure what the water wheel powers. Bubble, bubble, toil and trouble. A few more steps and out comes rum. It's a very complicated process to turn sugar cane into rum. Just a few more steps. You have to wait a while, while the rum ages in these barrels. And you get many different flavors of rum. We thought coconut was the best. Have a taste or two or three. Cheers. We enjoyed the best of St. Pierre. After lunch, we went on a glass-bottomed catamaran looking for sea turtles. We saw lots of fish on the surface, and there's windows in the pontoons. I thought that was a good concept. We could climb down into the pontoons and look out the windows. Not a spectacular view. It's a great concept. Maybe the water was just too cloudy. We had some time at the beach. The language barrier made it difficult to order snacks, and another guest helped us. We enjoyed our visit to Martinique. So now we're in St. John's, Antigua, right before our zipline adventure. We were not allowed to use our own cameras for fear it would cut into their photo package revenue. There's Laurie on a zipline. This is a picture. Take a picture because you won't see this again. We had fun, but on one run, Laurie put the brakes on too soon and had to be rescued. Sadly, no photos of that. It sounds like more fun than it is. So zippity-doo-dah. It's an exciting year life of this. We do this about 13 times around the course. We had never done it, and now we have done it and don't need to do it again. If you're looking for a thrill, find a bungee jump. We're back at the pier. Our Silver Ray was docked next to Silver Moon, and passengers from each ship were allowed a guest pass to tour the other. I didn't realize it at the time, but we are scheduled to cruise on the Silver Moon around Japan in February 2026. I would have paid closer attention. That evening, we took a pleasant sunset cruise and took in the sights around Antigua. Yes, it started to feel like a Caribbean overdose. Here's St. Kitts. We're heading out for a rainforest hike. So much for taking pictures along the way. We got the rain before we got to the rainforest. We watched a batik demonstration while we waited for the weather to clear. And we could browse the batik store. The weather did clear, and a hiking we went. There's water pipes all along the way, and what I found most fascinating was that the original water pipes were made of asbestos. The story is that asbestos is harmful if you breathe it, but not when you drink it. And they're replacing the broken asbestos pipes with PVC. However, they've got this broken asbestos all over the place, and there's got to be fibers everywhere, so this can't be a good thing. Do we really know if PVC pipes are safer than asbestos? We only know what we're told. So that's too much to worry about right now. On with the hike. We were hiking to an old sugar factory. At least the weather cleared up. We decided to have lunch back on the ship, as good as this looked. And we did have a fun day in St. Kitts. Now in St. Thomas, the pandemic hit St. Thomas hard. Many stores were closed. It was not the St. Thomas we remembered. Very sad. We had planned to get dropped off back in Charlotte Amalie after our tour, but there was no need. We had seen enough. It's still a beautiful setting, so hopefully it will come back in a few years if the cruise ships keep coming. Our tour took us to an ecological park. It's a slightly better setting than Ile de Royale, but the ecological park was not photogenic. We visited a scenic gift shop. We had to pass through the scenic gift shop that had there's the largest gift shop with the world's most expensive daiquiris. Use the exit at the far end to get to the scenic viewpoint. And here we are at the scenic viewpoint. We had better memories of St. Thomas. It's probably still a nice place to spend a week relaxing, which is what we had done with Laurie's parents when our kids were kids. This is our last Shabbat on board. and the crowd thins out. San Juan, Puerto Rico, our last stop. We're sailing into San Juan. Since I missed the Amazon rainforest, I signed up for this rainforest hike. Well, it's not quite the same. There's many trails to choose from unless you're on a Silver Sea hike. The park is still recovering from Hurricane Maria in 2017. I've been to Puerto Rico many times, but never visited the rainforest. I climbed the Yucaju Tower. Round and round we go. San Juan in the background, Steve in the foreground. This is the view from the top of the Yucaju Tower. No one could have ever guessed that I'm right-handed. Who goes up must go down. Notice how the up and down treads wear differently. This is the world's smallest gift shop. In just 2 days, I've been in both the largest and smallest gift shops. We actually did take a hike of sorts. There were art installations along the path, which at first I mistook for trash. The artist thoughtfully left explanations of his work for simpletons like me who don't get it right off the bat and mistake his art for trash. Isn't art what one would expect to find in a rainforest? This is the kind of art I would expect to find in a rainforest. But what do I know? We stopped for a treat on the way back to the ship. My hands were sticky after this work of art. And then we had a farewell party. We posed with a captain and an officer. We spent the next 2 days at sea packing. We thanked Martin, the food and beverage manager. Thanked Chef Michelle and our fabulous waiter, Jason. Collected our luggage in Fort Lauderdale. And much to my amazement, it all fit in one SUV. And we're finally heading home. I picked up my new car later that day, and we spent the next 2 weeks unpacking. Thank you for joining us on this brief recap of our grand South American voyage. If you liked this video and you'd like more details and pictures from this trip, as well as our adventure to India, go to funnysideoftravel.substack.com, where you'll find all of my posts with more details and pictures that I couldn't include here in the archive. You can subscribe for free, and you'll be on the list to receive amusing posts from our future trips. Our next big trip will be to Iceland and Greenland, which sounds really cool, and who knows what adventures await, so sign up today. Thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this brief recap of our 71-day grand adventure.